than a full-time person.
Thank you. Sorry.
No worries. We're just doing a beginning intro.
Okay.
So they are looking at doing staff optimization, and the Premier has been very clear. He will honor every single public service contract that exists today until they run out. What does that mean to the province? $2.6 billion over the next 3 years in increased spending for salaries. But what he has said is that when those contracts come due, they will be negotiating differently, and they're going to a different model. A model where they will negotiate multiple units at one time. We're seeing it in BC. Other provinces are happening it as well. This puts us on a more level playing field where you don't have one union that's very, very strong, one that's not, and it evens out the playing field. Part of the purpose of this budget is not to slash and burn like we've seen in the past, but the reality of it is the government spends right now $1,300 more per person on government services than any other province in this country. We need to reduce the cost of the service, and that's what he's trying to do. When we have $1.5 billion coming in different revenue, and I know that for some people, that means they'll pay a higher tax. If you make $130,000, you'll pay 0.5% more. If you make $70,000, you'll pay $200 a year more for healthcare levy. Yeah. That's not bad.
No, it isn't.
I do know that for some, the increased fees are a concern. And I appreciate that.
Of course they are.
Of course they are. They're for everybody. But here's what I would say to that. So for example, the cost of your driver's license went up $5. You renew your driver's license every 5 years. So that is $1 a year your driver's license went up. To register your vehicle, it went up, I believe, $5.75. Now, where it did go up, and this is where people are focusing, is to register your mortgage. Yes, you jumped from $250 to $750. Yes, that's a jump.
It's a bit much.
It is a bit much. I appreciate that. But most people actually only sell their homes and change their mortgages 3 times. So they'll have to factor that in, absolutely. And yeah, that's a big one. I appreciate that. The cost of a marriage certificate and a birth certificate did go up. I understand that that can be a concern for some. The cost of a death certificate did go up. What do you care? You're dead. No, I'm just joking. But it's not burdensome.
No.
A lot of these fees have not risen since the 90s. Liquor and smokes, yes.
Yeah,
In retrospect, a bottle of wine will now cost you 16 cents more.
yeah.
I don't drink.
A case of beer will cost you $1 more.
What?
Yes, I know.
Oh, awful.
Remember when it was $5.07?
No.
However, there is a role, and I'm a fiscal conservative as much as anybody, but if we want to end the reliance on oil, we have to figure out where revenue should come from and reduce government spending. And a PST wasn't the answer, because that means all of us pay, especially your lower and middle income folks, it hurts them the most. And raising corporate taxes, for every 1% that you raise corporate taxes, you'll lose 8,900 jobs. But more importantly,
I think you guys better change that line of thinking. Most of these companies had already planned these layoffs prior to the oil falling.
Yeah, they
I was just about to go there.
Down to 40.
Yeah.
It's kind of a misleading quote.
Fair.
But they pay big.
Yeah, but you
No
know,
evidence
we
support 9,000 jobs for 1%.
Well, we have industry who is supporting that. But I think you make a valid point. I was just about to go there to loop that, because I was going to say, more importantly, is that oil companies don't decide to lay off today because oil dropped yesterday.
No.
They go on a 5-10 year plan. My husband works for Schlumberger. They started laying off last year in anticipation of this. They're laying off 9,000 people over this next year. But this isn't something they decided in January. This isn't something they decided yesterday.
That's kind of telling the people it's smooth over.
Yeah.
It's not quite correct.
Yeah. But if you go and you talk to about 95% of our small business or corporations in Alberta are actually small business. They're not
That's
multinational
correct.
corporations.
Yeah.
And today I spent the day going up and down Main Street talking to our small businesses. I talked to the gift loft, I talked to the co-op, I talked to Tom Lindo Guitars, I talked to the insurance, Freeman Insurance, I talked to the travel agency. 1% raise for them means they're going to lay off our folks.
Wow.
That's
Is
reality.
there any way of taking a line somewhere, small business to large business?
It's probably a good point.
I'll give you a prime example. You give Shell Canada $370 million 2 years ago for
Right.
carbon capture and sequestration. $370 million. You just turned around and bought another company.
Yeah.
For how many billions of dollars? $70 billion. They're using our tax dollars to buy, and they haven't put one stake in the ground in carbon capture in 2 years.
Yeah.
So with that 370,
I think you make a valid point. Yeah.
I mean,
And
that's kind
I'll
of
ask.
stuff you have to take back and say,
Yep.
Jim,
I can definitely ask that question. Absolutely.
like Canadian Natural with $4 billion net profit in Canada.
Yeah.
Shell Canada, 3.5 or whatever it was. These bigger companies can afford the 1%
Yep.
without laying one person.
Yep.
But yeah, my small businesses, my small communities, you add that 1% on, it's gonna hurt.
And our farmers. A lot of
Yeah.
our farmers are corporations.
Well, I'm incorporated.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not gonna hurt me.
Right.
1% ain't gonna be a hill of beans, because I'll find 2% to write off somewhere else.
Wow.
But it just depends on where that,
No, I think you make a valid point. I'll feed that back.
On
Happy
what
to
the
have
base
that.
of
That's
that
part of this
1%
process,
is.
right?
Well, it's something you have to take back.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm happy to do that and see if I'll see if I can get a solution to that.
I have family who was at Northwest Redwater,
Yeah.
building the refinery up there.
Yep.
And they're not happy, for one thing. But the other thing is, how much do these oil companies pay for leases, which the government gets? See, nobody talks about how much the oil companies are putting in, as opposed to just taking the profit.
Yeah, and I would remind people that in 2008, we tried to change the royalty review, and
I was
oil
telling my
companies
brother-in-law
left.
about that yesterday.
Yeah, so the reality of it is that we're going to try a different model.
Well, he said that Stelmach actually got higher royalties.
No, he didn't.
What I
no,
heard
they
is
left.
that he didn't, then he chased people away from the
No,
province.
he didn't. The reason they left is because he was going to change the royalty review.
Right.
Yeah.
Kerry,
Okay, so-
I know.
It's your time. Still not introduced the increase in royalties.
Yep.
But meetings with CAP and everybody else in the industry, how can we slow down the cost of the service industry? Like your husband just
Yep.
went for Jake, there were X number of dollars plus they were charging the oil companies.
Yep.
If we threaten to leave, we start moving into Saskatchewan with our rigs.
Yep.
We killed this service industry. We'll come back. I mean, I was involved in service.
Yep.
If we come back and start hiring you again, you're gonna take a 50% cut. And that's why they did it. It wasn't because of the royalty. That was a facade that nobody.
Well, it was the precursor and the conversation that made it happen.
well, I want to get back to the subject here
Yeah.
that we're talking about. And we're talking about that 1%. And 1% doesn't really sound like much or look like much. And 1% of my cup of coffee is zilch. But when you take the big money from the oil companies and that 1% there on top, that's a big buck. And yes, maybe we can use it. But if they don't make a profit, they're not going to be in business.
Going to hire.
And it's no different than any other company. If we can't make a profit, we're out. So, I mean, yeah, you can take 1%, you say it's nothing. Well, unfortunately, it is for a lot of companies.
I'd like to add to that if I could. One of the things that people forget about is the millions and millions and millions that corporations donate all across
That's correct,
Alberta,
yeah. Yes.
whether it's bursaries, sponsorships, scholarships, putting people through school and having a job for them when they get out. They give to the food bank and all sorts of. Albertans are getting a lot of money from them towards social programs
Corporations
kind of thing.
give a
Right?
lot.
But how much lease money do they?
I don't know. I don't
Alberta
have that
get?
answer for you.
See, that's an important thing because they pay a lot of money for leases.
Well, the resource revenue last year that oil brought in was $9 billion. The reality of it is the government spent 100% of that $9 billion in operational.
Yeah.
What Mr. Prentice is trying to do is say that we should not be spending 100% of our oil revenue in operational. We need to create a plan that allows us to take a certain amount of that and put it into the Heritage Savings Trust
We've
Fund.
said that for 10 years.
Where is the Heritage
Prentice
Savings
hasn't said that
Trust
for
Fund?
10 years. He
Yeah,
just
exactly.
got here.
So the Heritage Savings Trust Fund right now is at $17.8 billion, and we have a $6 billion sustainability fund. So that's how the first year didn't have to have massive cuts. So what he's done is he's taken $2 billion from the sustainability fund. He's taking $1.5 billion in additional revenue and $2 billion in reduced government spending. And that's how he's coming up. We will still end up with a deficit. We will still end up with a deficit. And then he's building the budget at $58 oil, rolling into $60 oil, and ending at $70 oil in year 3. In year 2, he will take $2 billion from the sustainability fund. We will have the reduced government spending by another $2 billion for a total of 4 at that point in time, just over 4. And then we will have more people living here, so we will have additional revenue on this side. That will start to offset the need for using any of the sustainability fund. In year 3, that's when, in year 3 is the toughest year. So in year 3, what will happen in year 3 is we'll have increased revenue coming in from those higher taxes and fees, because more people will be living here. Hopefully oil has recovered somewhat, but we're not going to use all of that money anymore. And then in year 3, we'll see $3.6 billion in reduced government spending. And the majority of that will still come from senior administration. We're going to roll out local regional boards in Alberta Health Services. We're going to go back to local decision making. That will reduce the need for those senior administration roles. We're going to have lots of people through attrition in the next 3 years that we're going to be able to softly move out. But it also does mean we're going to have to pay out some severances, and that's part of contracts. So that's how it's a 3-year program for that part, a 5-year business plan. When we hit year 3, we will be at a balanced budget. Year 4, we will start to see a surplus. That surplus will automatically go into the Heritage Savings Trust Fund. At that point, we will be taking 25% of our oil resource revenue and putting that into the Heritage Savings Trust Fund. At year 5, we will be using 50% of our oil revenue, so $4.5 billion, on operational. 25% will go into Heritage Savings Trust Fund, and 25% will go back to servicing the debt that we've taken on in the 5 years of building that we're going to do. The next 5 years after that, it's the same plan, with 50% going into operational revenue, because we do still need to spend our oil revenue to run this province. But the other 50% being split between 25% going to the Heritage Savings Trust Fund, 25% going back to pay off the debt. And by year 10, we will see the Heritage Savings Trust Fund double to $34 billion. And we will not touch the interest off of that. So we will have surplus budgets by that point in time. Now, if oil goes to $100 oil, bonus.
Yeah.
If it goes to $80 a barrel, bonus. But if it stays at $50 a barrel, we won't be taking on massive debt. So we will have some debt, and we're going to borrow. And I know that that's difficult. I was against it at first. The reality of it is what we do in business, it's what we do in our homes, it's how we leverage, and they can borrow at 2.9%. They make 13% through income. And yeah, we have to slowly get rid of some of those jobs at the top. That's going to take time. Can't do it overnight. And healthcare has told us they don't want to go through another massive shakeup at Alberta Health Services. What they want is local decision making. What they want is input, and they don't want 7 layers of managers. They want to be able to go to their local person and say, I want to make this change, I can make it better. And we're going to get there. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
Okay. At 50, 25, and 25, you left out infrastructure budget.
No,
What are you going to pay for? How are you going to pay for
25
infrastructure?
So we're borrowing, like I said, for the first 5 years, we're going to invest $29 billion in infrastructure.
So that's more debt.
Yep, like I said, we're going to borrow for infrastructure. We can borrow at 2.9%. We can make 13%. So we are going to borrow for infrastructure. There is no question. We are borrowing for infrastructure. That is the plan.
Where do they borrow from?
The Gary probably knows this better than me, but through the World Bank.
I'm not sure, it'd be bonds.
Enough.
Yeah.
Investments.
Yeah.
The lending entities.
Yeah, so the people who give us our AAA rating and all of that, they have a system, that's what they do.
Not CIBC, I don't.
Well, Jim is a multimillionaire, he can throw in some of his own money.
Well, you know what, we can't falter. Look, you know, in Alberta, I mean, I think we've got to be careful when we criticize somebody for being, for
I'm not
doing bad.
criticizing, I'm just saying he can, if
And
he wanted to.
He doesn't take a single expense.
No.
Everything he does, he pays out of his own pocket and doesn't charge a single expense back to the taxpayer. He could have stayed in a $2 million a year job too. Instead, he chose to come back for $210,000 and help to fix the problems.
Okay, are they planning to cut expense accounts and stuff like that? Like things that, like food and beverage bothers me. Because no matter what you do, you don't have that?
No, so last year, we used to get a per diem for being in Edmonton, $193 a day. We don't get that anymore. It was gone last year.
How about food and beverage?
So I can, if I'm hosting someone here as an MLA, then I can host, like if it's a group of constituents, I can buy them lunch. And that's through my constituency budget. I have my own budget, and I'm responsible for that. And it's publicly displayed on the website. When I'm over 60 kilometers in my own riding for my MLA business, I get $11 for lunch, $7 for breakfast, and $36 for supper.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Because no matter what you do in life, working, you still have to eat. And you still have to drink. So I don't know why that just can't come out of a salary, just like the rest of us.
Well,
That's
it's not
a
just
perk.
like the rest of you. I
That's
mean,
a perk.
If I'm required to go to Trochu on MLA business, I don't think any of the taxpayers have a problem if I buy a hamburger at McDonald's. It's
No,
a
that's
per
no
diem.
big deal. It's the $15 and $20 lunch.
We don't
Stuff
do
like
that. You
that.
only get $11 for lunch. And you don't do that every day. In February, February I was in my nomination. I claimed no expenses, no mileage. None, zero, because I was
That's
in the
admirable.
nomination. I could have, but I didn't.
That's admirable.
But in all of March, I claimed six different meals. That's it for 30 days.
Okay.
Look, quite frankly, we're watched like hawks anymore, and it's not about what you can get. It's about the ethic of the person who can get it.
Especially with the thing about Duffy going on these days. Too.
Yeah, that's.
It's relatively in people's minds about politicians taking money for things that they could just as easily pay for out of their own pocket.
I don't think, honestly, that's not been my experience. I'm not saying it's been the experience of everybody, but my experience, I've been elected for 3 years. My expenses are public. They're online, and
I'm just saying in general. I'm not
every
picking on you.
MLA's expenses get disclosed publicly at the end of the year. We don't have pension. We don't have transition. That was ended. Anybody pre-2012 will have transition. Anybody post-2012 has your salary. And I don't know if you've noticed, but Gary can speak to this. I mean, Gary made far less than I do. But Gary can speak to this. Unlike other jobs,
Who's Gary?
Gary Severson, he used to be the MLA here.
Okay.
But unlike other jobs, I'm on duty 24/7.
I know you're a spitfire when it comes to work.
No, but people come to my house at 11 o'clock at night and say, hey, I got this problem. My mom is in the hospital and she's got this issue. In other jobs, you don't have to do that. If I make a mistake, I get blasted across the TV. People are free to say whatever they want to me whenever they want.
Okay.
And
I'll remember that.
But they're hello, hon. It's far different than a traditional job. But I look at, and I honestly, I think a lot of my colleagues, I don't think Gary would disagree, but it's about the person who's in the job. And if
I'm
you
just
have the
talking about
right,
appearances, though, to the public.
yeah. But a lot of that is because they don't ask. I mean, this morning in Spruceview, who's in so Heather. In Spruceview today, remember there was one guy there. It was like, you MLAs, your pension, and then you get severance, and you're making like $350,000 a year, and you don't pay for anything. You don't have to do anything. You don't even go to the house. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. But he firmly believed I had a full pension. He firmly believed I had a full transition, and it's just not accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you convince him you didn't?
Yep. And he took fine.
Did he apologize?
Yep.
Good.
He said, I didn't know that. I apologize. And I said absolutely.
But
That's
I
why we're
think-
here.
I think that's where it is, because a lot of us don't have the true conception, right?
That's right.
Because you hear, like he says, all the bad stuff, right? Like $12 for a cup of juice. But that reflects
Well,
on
that's
everybody.
that
But
woman.
it's like you coming to us and saying, Like putting everything on fax, and the fax will go online and say, well,
Well, yeah, it's publicly disclosed. You can go online and see.
That's after the fact.
It doesn't matter. It keeps
Yeah.
me accountable. If I know you can go online and take a look
Well,
at
I'm
what
proud
I'm
of
doing.
you for keeping it low.
Yeah, I think that's important.
she's a miser.
Yeah, it's
Even
not.
her person.
Do you have any questions back there, Bob? Not at the moment. Bob's wise.
I have another one,
Sure.
and I'll let people think about. But the CO2 sequester, like I say, I'm connected to Northwest Redwater, right? Northwest Capital.
Yeah.
And Ian McGregor, he apparently got the contract with the Alberta government for CO2 sequestering into
Right, carbon
empty,
capture and storage.
yeah, into empty wells. So how much more of that is going on, and how much revenue is the government getting from that?
Well, they're not getting any revenue. It's proven to not have worked. And as we saw with the rise up of landowners, I think that pretty much that's done.
Okay, so that
but
brings-
it cost Albertans a lot of money.
So
A
that
lot of
comes
money.
back to the CO2 carbon taxing. So what are they going to do now that they don't?
We're going to
they're
leave
not
it
going to
as
do
it is.
sequestering?
We're going to leave it as it is
There's $275 million paid to the ECCS.
to the province.
Budget. Yeah.
275 million.
McGregor got what, $2.5 billion?
Yeah, it was
And
massive.
there's 8 pylons.
Yeah,
Is there any?
it was a waste. There's no question.
Is there going to be anything about revoking the 0.05
No,
law? No.
Albertans don't want that.
Well, a lot of us want it gone.
Yep, a lot of you don't.
I don't know why.
What about infrastructure? Was there anything, like I know you've got the budget, but what about, is there going to be any, is everything on freeze? Or have you got so much, like for schools or hospitals?
No.
Or?
Well, the Premier's been very clear. We'll continue to build our schools. We'll continue to build our hospitals. We have 56 schools right now that are in the planning stages. We have 35 schools right now that are at the tender point. And then we have a number of schools that we're still dealing with the municipalities on permits and those kind of issues. I know there's a lot of conversation about signs.
Promises.
I was a part of them, yeah.
For
But
years.
some of those do take time. It's taking 18 months to get through the permitting process through the city of Calgary. That has nothing to do with the province. It's 18 months to get through the permitting process through the city of Calgary. Anybody who's tried to build a house in a municipality who tries to change zoning and work with that process knows that it can be difficult. Yeah, we're facing some challenges there. What the province did do rightfully is change the P3 model. It proved not to work, and so they've gone away from that model. With the Calgary Board of Education, they actually worked with the Calgary Board of Education and is allowing the Calgary Board of Education to actually outsource it with strict controls from the province side to make sure it doesn't go over budget. They've changed the way they tendered the contracts. They're getting away from cost plus, which is important because that means that you have to come in at budget, and for every day you go over budget, you're fined, and you can't do this cost plus. But it also means that we have to have firm decisions on certain parts because if you make changes, those cost money. One of the things that the Premier has told us as a caucus, and I know has told the Minister of Infrastructure the same thing, is that we have architects in the province, in the government. Start using them. Not everything has to go out to another architect to be tendered for a brand new fancy-dancy school. Doesn't have to happen. And then make sure that our schools are actually usable.
Kerry, there's been a lot of talk about the expansion or the building of schools and the staffing of them. I know the Calgary Board of Education is in dire straits money-wise. As an example, how will they be able to get teachers to fill these new schools?
So the the Ministry of Education actually received $149 million more to cover that off.
Oh, good.
So here's what I would also say to you is, remember that everybody has a position and an agenda, including the government, 100%. So when the Calgary Board of Education says that they're in dire straits, let's remember that trustees got a 7% raise last year. Let's also remember that every Board of Education, every school board, has a travel budget, has an education budget, has a conference budget, has a maintenance budget, has multiple different areas. It's not just frontline teachers. And what the minister has said to all school boards, and he said it very clearly, is that when you're looking at your budget, make sure you are looking at administration, and you are looking at your own internal budgets first,
Yes.
I will not approve a budget that cuts frontline teachers. You won't.
Will it be able to add them?
Well, they received $149 million in the ministry, and the intention of that is there's a portion of that that will go to the increased salaries that come from the negotiations, and also to cover off the new schools that will come online this budget year.
Yeah, okay, but I'm talking about the staffing of the new schools. Is that what you're saying?
It's in that
Okay.
149 for the
It's
new
in that.
schools this year.
Yeah,
We
okay.
will have to do with year two
Yeah.
as year two comes along. But Department of Education, Ministry of Education didn't get cut. They got $149 million more.
No, I'm just going by what you hear and
Yeah.
questions, and I just thought, okay, I'll get the clearance on that. Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
And we do all have to take a look.
Oh, of course, have to take our bill.
Yeah, and including administration of boards. You know, can't ask the government to do it and you to do it, and they don't have to do it.
That's right.
Can you get rid of some of their cell phones?
Yeah, and so I don't know if you know that Minister Mandel has asked that anybody who had inappropriate calls